Sing with me. Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? Caught in a landslide, no escape from reality. Open your eyes, look up to the skies and see. I'm just a poor boy, I need no sympathy, because I'm easy come, easy go, little high, little low. Anywhere the wind blows doesn't really matter to me. To me. I wish I could sing it as good as them. Anyway, welcome to, I guess it's video number 7, even though it's January 6th. I had a 5-mile walk this morning and listened to an audiobook, so that was fun. But I really felt compelled to make a video while I had the ideas in my head. So this video is going to be an emotional preview of what's to come. I'm going to be the ghost of your emotional future if you're going through a significant financial change. Up to now, I've focused a lot on the math, which I have to admit it's a bit of a disease for me, because most of the progress is going to come from emotional changes, but because I spend all day doing technical math type things, and because the math is very satisfying because it's very precise, I felt the need to lay it all out there. And for sure, I'll even revisit it more in the future. But admittedly, I have some regrets because I know that I could have simplified it, and there are a lot of people who would have heard a simpler message better. Some of the stuff I did, frankly, was probably just distracting. But so it goes. Now we're back to a video on emotions. I guess the first thing I wanted to point out was some signs that I grew up with. I guess while I was growing up, I look at them and I think, oh, this is kind of hokey or whatever. But in my 30s, I appreciate them more. The winners in life are the losers who keep trying. Kind of a folksy southern shell sign. And I know that sometimes in my career I've felt like a loser for certain. But I've just kept going, and it's been working out. What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? This one becomes more and more believable as you do things and succeed at them. It's less believable when you look at it. When you look at it, you're like, well, first off, it's by unknown. Who knows who that is? And second, of course somebody would say this who's already succeeded, because there's hindsight bias. Well, I think there's a beautiful thing. You can only get hindsight bias after you actually done something. So you got to do some stuff, even if you fail most of the time. You know, if you win 10% of the time, then you just have to try 10 things and one of them succeeds. So there's that. This is one of my favorites on the right here, is God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I think too often I see people failing, or I fail, at the center one, the courage to change the things I can. Because I guess we all see things that we can't change that we're bummed out by. And so that kind of happens automatically. And serenity is, to some extent just not carrying it or burying your head in the sand or focusing on something else. The wisdom to know the difference, that's often hard. But I think the more time you spend on the courage to change the things I can, the more time you spend on, planning, then you tend to get more wisdom about knowing the difference, because the things that you try to plan that don't work out, you learn from them. And you also learn from the things that do work out. And then on the left here, we have a sign that I grew up with on my mom's bedroom door. And I love the phrasing on this sign. Your stupid parents. I think there was even multiple question marks here. Act now, move out, get a job, pay your bills while you still know everything. So, yeah. I guess this was an emphasis to me of like, you better have your stuff squared away after college. And finally, this is the kind of hallmark back of the workbook for Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University. Don't quit. The key to success in anything is determination! Exclamation point. I don't like the design style in it. I think it's an overuse of exclamation point. But the don't quit part, that's basically it. When it comes to financial success, the 60% of your chance of success is based on you not quitting. It's not based on you understanding the math. It's not based on you making progress in even 2 years. It's not based on your income. It's not based on a lot of things, but it is based on not quitting. And Dave Ramsey's program, I think like 40% of the people in these classes drop out after the first class, and they won't even save $1,000 in cash, which is the first thing that he asks you to do. Both because it proves that you can save any money at all, and because having $1,000 in cash protects you against certain problems like overdrawing an account or freaking out and taking a really expensive payday loan. So the message of don't quit, keep going, keep pushing forward. I guess there's the Galaxy Quest, never give up, never surrender. That is everything. And so anything that you can do to trick yourself into continuing to pay attention to this financial stuff is going to pay dividends. So I've done a ton of this stuff over time. Set a bunch of reminders on your phone, simple reminders, like, preemptively for the entire year, every 2 weeks, have your phone remind you need to do a budget for this pay period. You need to do a budget for this pay period. Or just like encouraging messages, like it's March, you're awesome, stop spending money. Whatever it is, I don't know. But any signs that you can hang up around your place. I know I've got a sign I keep on my fridge, which is this house that I really liked that was in the forest. And it was a lovely house, but I realized when I looked at it that even though I could probably get a loan for it, it wasn't a good idea to get a loan for it. And so I had to pass on it, even though technically I could do it. Like, it was possible for me to execute the transaction, but it wasn't a good idea, so I had to turn it down. But I leave it up because I know that later it'll be a good idea to do it, just not now. So it's kind of one of those motivational, this is what you have to look forward to. And that's why, you're not upgrading your car or anything like that. Audiobooks on the commute. I do a lot of audiobooks while I'm walking. The Millionaire Next Door is excellent. Millionaire Mind is excellent. Dave Ramsey's free podcast is wonderful. He's also got a couple books. Accountability Partners, I've had a lot of them. Automatic withdrawals for savings and debt payments, so the money's not even in your hands. Anything that you can automate or put in place to remind you that this is going on, or encourage you, or make what you're doing seem more normal by keeping other people who are doing similar and similarly difficult things in front of your face, is going to increase your success. But you have to stay on it. And even when you make a mistake and you fall off the horse, when you remember that there is a horse, you jump back on. And most people fall off the horse at some point. I definitely did. But I got back on. I guess my lapses were usually like a couple months, if you look on average. So here are some of the emotional things that I want to give a preview of that are going to happen. And I want to do this so that when they do happen to you, you can say like, oh, this is that emotional thing that I expected was coming, rather than you don't recognize what's going on and you just bury your head in the sand or say this is impossible or get depressed or whatever. So, by recognizing that these things are going to happen up front, we increase the chances that we can have a more calm, reserved reaction to them and focus on the courage to change the things I can part, and not the I'm so freaked out I'm going to stop. That's not really part of the prayer, but that's fine. Phrase I constantly remind myself: times of great progress typically don't look glamorous. They don't. What looks glamorous is usually after you've succeeded at something, but while you're doing it, it's, you're not going to restaurants. So, like my Instagram, it's like my food Instagram. It would be like, here's like a microwave burrito and, what did I have? Like a root beer or a Coke, and these are like the $1 Costco microwave burritos. These aren't like deluxe guacamole. This is like beans and cheese. And that's what I was on when I was paying off my credit card debt in the very beginning. And it wasn't that long. I mean, it was months. So, months I actually turned the burrito sideways and stood it up like a tower, because that made me feel a little like a badass, because I could balance the burrito. But other than that, like, the burrito didn't have a whole lot to recommend it. That, now I can eat tacos from the taco place down the street. It's like $6.50, $7. It's good. I like them. The chorizo is especially good. All right, so once you kind of get going with this, the process goes like this. Number one is like savings rate shock. You hear that last video, 28% of your take-home pay. And I mean, statistically speaking, I know that most of the people watching this aren't saving 28% of their take-home pay. We know just by looking at the average American savings rate and savings rates by age and retirement success rates. And so you see that number and you're like, what? Where's this money going to come from? And there's an emotional shock to that. And you got to keep going. So you receive the shock, and then you keep staring at why you need that 28% and what the alternatives are. And eventually you'll realize you need the 28%. That's the bottom line. The alternative is unacceptable. Not having the money later is unacceptable. And you'll realize that the more that you read documentaries, watch documentaries, read descriptions. There's a book called $2 a Day that describes what it's like to not have any money in America. It's not pretty, but I think it's productive for people to look at those things and read those things to make the reality of 30 years from now come forward into the present, so you can have more empathy with your future self. So after you understand that the savings rate has to hit 28%, then it's more like Rocky montage, because now you're like, okay, let me look at every single part of my spending. Let me look at, exactly why I need 28%. Is there any way that I can game that percentage and maybe do less? And the answer is kind of no, sorry. And you'll start moving things around. You'll cancel certain memberships. You'll think about moving. You'll think about, being more deliberate with your grocery bill. You'll think about what you're going to need to do to eat at fewer restaurants. You'll need to think about what kind of vacations you're taking. You'll need to think about what kind of hobbies you're involved in. All these different things. And so eventually you'll move enough stuff around that you'll hit the target savings rate. And for some people, like, this might involve a job change or something to get the income up high enough that it's possible. And I'll definitely have a video only focused on income. I would say for most people, especially the people who are likely to be watching this video, you already have the income. You just need to live in kind of what's a weird way in America, because the way most people live is making them broke. You'll need to live in a weird way, a weirdly cheap way, to hit this savings rate goal. And at the beginning, it's going to be a slog, because you're not used to living this way. You're not adapted to it. And slogs, they can get boring, because before you were trading money for pleasure. You would be trading money to go out to a restaurant, or you'd be trading money to go out on a trip or to go to a concert or whatever. And now you're not doing that anymore, because you know you need the money for your future. And you haven't devised alternative activities that don't cost money and alternative habits that don't cost money to fill in that gap. So it's going to get boring. And you're going to get impatient. You're like, this is really boring. Like, I need to do something to speed this up because I really don't want to live this way. And so you'll keep saving money, but you'll begin thinking less about the savings percentage and more about these substitute activities, more about creative things you can do beyond the budget cutting that are going to get you what you want out of life, that are going to get you more satisfaction out of life. Whether that's, more volunteer work where you get to interact with people without spending money, or whether that is, taking up biking or something so that you can get more exercise while at the same time maybe having only one car between you and a spouse rather than two. And you'll make it work. Okay, eventually you'll hit a wall with savings and these other activities, and you'll think more of the income side. You'll think about asking for a raise. You'll be thinking about a job change. You'll be thinking about an Etsy store. You'll be thinking about selling some of the stuff you have to get rid of the debt that you're trying to pay off or reaching whatever goal it is. And you'll spend time on that side. Income will increase. And a lot of people imagine that when income increases, that it means they're working more. And a lot of times this isn't the case. This has especially not been the case for me. And what I mean by that is that $6.25-hour dining room job that I had when I was in college is definitely the least pleasant job that I've ever had. And I was working 12 hours a day on my feet, lifting, 50-pound things of bananas to get it done. And as I've moved to each additional job, the jobs, while they get more technically challenging, overall they become more pleasant. And so I'd encourage people to keep an open mind about what their options are in their career and what different paths they can take. 80% of people don't take a path that was directly related to their college major. So that's a fact about income. So when you get that increased income, then you'll revisit the math, because now you can either increase your savings rate in order to get out of the game earlier or pay off the debt faster. And that'll feel good. But now you're just going to go back to number 5, where you think more creatively about what are your next steps. Maybe your next step at that point is to use some of this extra income to pay for a class so that you can understand software better, like Salesforce. Maybe you can use this extra income to... Well, classes are really good, and that's what's on the top of my mind right now. Maybe your friends are trying to find a new apartment at that point in time that they weren't, that's something that wasn't an option 6 months before. And so now you have the option of going to live with them and decreasing your housing costs. There's all kinds of things that happen. Point is, it's a cycle. It's a cycle of going through these things, and every month you are optimizing one other thing, and after 2 years you've optimized 24 things. And it really does make a difference when you've changed 24 things. That's hard to see when you've only changed one thing and it's been a month and you're sick of eating, grocery food and you miss your sushi. But there's a nice other aspect to the psychology, which is that there's a concept called hedonic adaptation. What that means is when you get a nice thing in your life, you typically enjoy it when you get it, and then over time you come to expect it, so you don't enjoy it as much. And this also works in reverse. I've found is that when I give up something, the moment that I give it up, I feel bad. Even for things I know that I probably won't use, I feel bad when I give it up. But 3 months later, I don't care anymore. And a lot of people can't see this when they're trying to achieve the savings, because the immediate action of cutting the things out of their life is emotionally painful. But I can tell you from experience, from years of cutting things out of my life, that hedonic adaptation works in reverse. You cut something, three months later, you've replaced it with some free thing, and you really don't care anymore. It's just not a big part of your emotional life at that point. So I would say that encouraging you to make experimental cuts. Just say, you know what, I don't know if I want to cut this or not, but I'm going to take a vacation from it. I'm going to cut it and revisit it in 3 months and just see if I want it back. You can always buy the thing back. You can always get the service back. But, preemptively just go ahead and make the cut, and you'll make progress faster by pursuing techniques like that. So these cuts, you'll experience disappointment. You'll experience disappointment also from the point of view of you'll set up some kind of savings schedule and you'll set up a financial plan, and things will get in the way of your financial plan, and that'll bum you out. And you're not going to be able to control them. So realize up front that bad things are going to happen. Bad things are definitely going to happen while you try to execute this. And that's fine. You're going to get past them, but you need to jump on to the horse. Jump back on the horse. Hope the horse doesn't jump on you. So something else you're going to experience, and I think this is especially true in the case of housing, is that spending is closely tied with identity. Whether that identity is around a job title, like how should a doctor look, how should a lawyer look, how should a real estate agent look, what kind of car do they drive, what kind of clothing do they wear, or whether that spending is tied to social class, because plenty of people can go to, say, Hawaii, but Hawaii is an especially expensive vacation compared to, some Airbnb on the California coast, because you have to pay for that flight, and then everything's more expensive because it's an island and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying Hawaii is bad. What I'm saying is that, especially for people who are in a field where they're going to increase their income significantly within the next 5 years, and therefore the next 2 years are going to be especially savings oriented, and you're going to have more cutbacks. You're going to have to give up luxuries for those 2 years. You're going to have to give up things that maybe you were doing before when you weren't saving enough. And when you give those up, the emotional reaction is more than disappointment. Because a lot of people, they think to themselves, I worked so hard and I've been so successful in terms of raising my income up. I deserve to have a normal living situation. And normal is defined by, whatever they had in some other state. So a 2,000 square foot home. But the problem in California is that a 2,000 square foot home here is like half your take-home pay. And that just doesn't work when you're trying to also save for retirement, so you can't do it. But it's really emotionally sad to know that you can't have what's considered normal somewhere else. The numbers just don't support it. And I think that for me, it's been helpful that I've had to recognize that if I'm going to identify as a wealthy person, I have to identify as someone who's willing to make sacrifices to get there and to do the right thing. And that makes sacrificing more successful, because then or attractive, sacrificing more attractive, because then, if I have a shirt with a hole in it, that's a wealthy making shirt. If I have a car that has a dent in it that I'm not fixing, that's the car of a wealthy person. I'm on the way. Not like, I'm too broke ass to fix the dent in my car. It's a matter of perspective, but it's something that you need to pay attention to, especially when we start talking about housing. Another thing you're going to experience, which is on the brighter side, is you'll see situations that look really bad and you don't know how to fix them, and then you will figure out how to fix them, and they'll resolve themselves, and you'll be able to look back and you say, that actually wasn't that bad. I just needed to ask this guy what to do. And I've seen that in a lot of, I went on a vacation once, and they canceled the room that I had booked by the beach. And I got a personality where I don't have any patience for that. And I just just wanted to write a really bad review and go find another hotel entirely and talk to them, because this customer service person was being really rude. Person I was with was a lot more experienced than me, working through these kind of business systems, so then it was, okay, let's talk to the manager. Turned out the manager was way more reasonable than the original person. So we got a free room that night and, moved into a better room the following night. But point is, now I know to press harder in terms of talking with people through the hierarchical structure when I'm in a situation like that. So that's a learning, and you're going to learn things like that on the finance side also. And then there's going to be a bunch of random stuff. One's called the Diderot effect. It's like one of my favorite psychology things. I guess the French guy Diderot wrote about it back in the day. And it's this concept where you want everything to be consistent. You don't want any items of conspicuous underconsumption, I guess you would say, which means that you think when you buy that nice new $1,500 TV that it's $1,500, but it's not, because you're going to feel compelled after you buy that $1,500 TV to buy a better couch, to buy better speaker system, and that $1,500 TV is going to evolve into $4,000 of spending. But you don't realize that's happening. Most people aren't realizing up front that certain items, when they buy them, are going to pressure them to make additional purchases that cut down on their savings. So, I'll remind you of Diderot effect, and I'll remind you of other psychology concepts throughout these videos, so that when situations come across in your life and you think like, oh, I need a new couch now, you can be like, oh, maybe I don't need a new couch now. Maybe it's okay for me to have this isolated item that's just really nice, and I hold back on everything else, and it's going to look weird, but it's only going to look weird temporarily. And this kind of weirdness is the weirdness of people who are successful in these things. Next thing I want to talk about is debt, because it's something I haven't talked about so far. I've only talked about the savings percentage needed, and there's a lot of debt out there now. There's a lot of student loan debt. I think it's like to the tune of $30,000 on average when people graduate from college now. I know people with failed business debt. I had a good amount of credit card debt. I know people who had payday loan debt, old bad debt, and debt has its own kind of psychology of shame, where it's shameful in American culture to talk about how much debt you have, because it's like you're not independent, like the Western frontier independence or whatever. And debt, more so than savings, can feel like this wall that you can't get past, especially if you have like $100,000 of debt and you're looking at it and you know that you can only put like $1,000 on it this month, and it's looking like it's going to take 10 years to pay off, and you can't even imagine what life is going to be like in 10 years. It's a big deal. That is for sure a big deal. And so on the emotional side, I think that we just have to recognize that having a lot of debt is a big upsetting thing. And as I said before, most of success in this is about emotion. We're going to have to work on, for people who have large debts, helping them to pump up and get excited and get energetic about paying off the debt, and also about building mechanisms to continue to encourage themselves to pay off the debt. I have paid off a total of $132,000 of debt in the last 4 years. And as I said in the beginning, it's a slog. It's not it feels like, the month that you pay the stuff down, it feels like the money just disappeared into a black hole. Because on the month level, you're not seeing a lot of difference. You're not seeing a lot of change that's emotionally meaningful. But the thing is like, if you got a 2-year debt payoff plan, or 3 years, or whatever it is, when that time is up, the debt's gone. And it's a weird thing, because even up to 2 months or 3 months before the debt is completely paid off, your brain is still like, ah. And and then there's there's the lenders calling you for that old bad debt, the ridiculous interest percentages on payday loan debt that just cause it to balloon in size, people threatening to sue you, debt is a big emotional contributor to this process. And I just want to point out, if you have a lot of debt, my retirement talk and my savings talk is not irrelevant. It's still within your grasp. You're going to be on a different path from somebody who doesn't have it, but that path is still going to be a winning path. There's just special debt-related things you're going to need to do to knock out the debt first and to focus yourself like a laser on killing it. And then you can move on to the savings part. And for most people, I think they can, for almost every single person, they can pay off the debt in less than 5 years. For most people, less than 2 years. But it's going to be a weird 2 years, guaranteed. I'm not going to lie. And so I wanted to show you what this has looked like for me. 2013 is the blue line. So in 2013, I was kind of saving regularly, but not enough. In 2013, I still was nowhere. I wasn't anywhere near where I needed to be. And, I had like $16,000 of credit card debt here. So even though I was saving, I was also going into debt during 2013. So that was kind of canceling out some of the savings. So by the way, yeah, these are savings or debt payoff by year. So any money that I put into paying off a debt or any money that I put into savings, those deposits are represented by these lines. And there's also withdrawals if I withdraw money. So, 2013, I was regularly putting away money, but I was also going into debt. So it wasn't really working out well for me. 2014 was kind of my turning point. At the end of 2013, beginning of 2014, I was like, I can't keep doing this. I need to change. I need to be excited about a future because right now I don't feel like I have one. And that sucks. So I'm done with this. So I just kind of nuked everything. I completely cut back on everything I was doing. 2014, my annual goal was to walk 7.5 miles a day, 15,000 steps. So I just listened to personal finance books and podcasts all year long while walking for 2 hours a day. And that really was, effective at brainwashing myself into doing the right thing. So 2014 was a fabulous year compared with 2013 in terms of, I got myself out of all the consumer debt and I saved a significant amount of money for the first time in my life, really. 2015 was not a terrible year, but I made some mistakes. So I did better than 2013, but I did worse than 2014. I had a relationship breakup in here. 2015 was a rocky year for me. In my 2015 annual review, I realized that. And so I approached 2016 differently. And I remembered in 2016 that 2015 had been unnecessarily bad. And so in 2016, I did things differently. And I had my best savings year ever up to that point. I exceeded even 2014. And under more difficult circumstances. In 2014, I was living with a roommate. And so it was cheaper. Housing was cheaper. 2016, I didn't have a roommate. So it was more expensive, but I still managed to save more than I had in 2014. 2017, I just blew everything out of the water. This was a combination of income raising activity I had done before that. It was a combination of some random investments that I had made years ago that happened to pay off at the beginning of 2017. But also it was, a lot of focused attention on my part and focused planning to make it happen. So 2017 has been great. 2018, doing my best to stay on track. And so I feel like between 2016 and 2017, I don't think I'm going to have a significantly worse year in 2018, but I know I need to stay focused to get there. And so point is, I'm not perfect, but I can show that over time, I've improved and I'm moving up. And sometimes you take one step back to take 2 steps forward. But if you just keep at it, don't quit, keep moving different aspects forward, you're going to improve over time and things are going to get better. And the final thing I wanted to show you is a different view of my debt payoff and savings. So this was plotting all the years against each other to show how good one year relatively was to another. This is the full timeline starting at 2012 and going into 2013. So you can see 2012, I really wasn't making any progress on anything. 2013, I had these automatic withdrawals into savings, which is why this line is so even. And at the end of 2013, I went crazy, and I was like, I can't keep on with this debt. I have to significantly change what I'm doing. And so you can see that it just jumps up there because I just focused everything on paying off that debt and changing my savings behavior, because it became clear after I'd done the reading that if I didn't change my habits, if I didn't plan more often, if I didn't actually start giving this attention, it wasn't going to change, and I wasn't going to get what I wanted out of life. So, 2014, 2015, 16, 17, it moves on. I think something I want people to know about this is that this looks really dry. It looks like this upward graph. But the truth is that all of these little downturns and upturns, and this blip right here and that blip right there, and the accelerated stuff right here, these are all life events. These are breakups. These are side jobs that I took. These are investments that paid off because I had sacrificed money years earlier to get them. There's a story in all of the movements of the graph, and some of the stories are nice and they were encouraging and they gave me like some dopamine, and other stories were sad and taught me things that I would do differently, or just taught me that one of those is likely coming in the future again, so I need to prepare for it. But I wouldn't know any of this unless I had like gone ahead and actually tracked these deposits over time, and then also set aside the planning time to look at the downturns and look at what was going in my life and remind myself of what was going on in my life so that I could understand how this is all working. But for me, I look at this and I'm like, okay, fell off the horse, got back on the horse, fell off the horse, got back on the horse, accelerated the horse, stayed on the horse. It just shows me that keeping at it does work. And that doesn't mean everything is going to be perfect. It just means it's hugely important in this whole process to encourage yourself emotionally forward, to pay attention to emotional planning. I do that every year. What I do is I look at the previous years and I say, what times during the year did I mess things up and why? And so for the future year, I say, what do I need to do during this part of the year to prevent myself from making the mistakes I made in the past? So I not only have the financial planning part of it where I say, what do I need to save? But I have the emotional planning where I say, how am I likely to feel that month and why? And what am I going to do to counter that feeling so that I actually succeed with this? And so that's a fact. I'm definitely going to do, I think, a description of my annual planning and how I go about it. It's a bit of a pain in the butt, but these long-term overviews of kind of how your financial behavior is going, they're really helpful for understanding your own psychology and not making the same mistake over and over again. So that's it for the emotion psychology video. Keep these things in mind. Think about how they apply to you. Reflect internally, like a Zen monk. What causes your spending? Why are you so empty inside? Or whatever. All right, that's it. Have a good day.